It's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies NBA Cup Fever. Catch it. Oh boy, they're playing the exact same team, but it's going to be different because there's a new court and different uniforms. What are you going to do, brother, when the NBA Cup runs wild on you? But before we talk about that, we're going to update you on Zach Edey and Ja Morant in terms of their health prognosis. And we're going to lead off today's show saying whether or not Taylor Jenkins is the greatest Memphis Grizzlies coach of all time. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, what you gonna do, brother? Brother, NBA Cup, brother. Oh, brother, NBA Cup. Let's get this.
Yeah, got me about to go Hulkamania and rip the shirt over here.
Brother, it's the NBA Cup, brother. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Grizzlies. That voice that you just heard, if you're listening on audio podcast, that was not Hulk Hogan. That was actually me, Joe Mullinax, one of your hosts here on Locked On Grizzlies. It also wasn't Damichael Cole if he did a better Hulk Hogan impression. Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Neither of us are Hulk Hogan. That's probably a good thing for a variety of reasons that we won't go into on this program. Welcome to Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make sure that you're making Damichael and I a part of your everyday Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. Be an everydayer if you're not already. And don't just be an everydayer to the podcast. Be an everydayer to the newsletter. Just about every day, a newsletter will hit your inbox. Written words from me, great national stories, fantasy basketball information, all sorts of different things. Again, LockedOnDaily.com. Make sure you're checking out LockedOnDaily.com and subscribing to the completely and totally free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Damichael, one of the things that is leading off the newsletter today is talking about the very real question that we're approaching. Taylor Jenkins at 214 victories. He is now tied with Lionel Hollins for the winningest coach in Memphis Grizzlies franchise history. Likely to break that either tonight against the Nuggets or tomorrow against the 76ers, assuming the Sixers are still very broken, which they appear to be. One of these two games, because again, it's not like Denver is super fixed either. One of these two wins or games at home should be a win. That would give Taylor 215, and that would put him in the upper echelon. So for you, partner, you have a unique situation where you are there covering the team every day. And your run as Grizzlies beat writer, all you've known is Taylor Jenkins as the head basketball coach. But for those of you that are new here, Damichael is born and bred Memphian. You surely remember Lionel Hollins and
I've had a lot of conversations with him. Yeah.
Hubie Brown, right? Some other names that have been very successful coaches for the Grizzlies. So I'll ask you, I think you deservedly should lead this conversation off. Taylor Jenkins becomes the winningest coach in the next day or so. Is he the greatest coach in Memphis Grizzlies history right now?
I say yes, Joe. Put Taylor Jenkins atop the mantle. He is the greatest Grizzlies coach in franchise history. And here is why I believe that to be the case. One, let's start here. Each and every coach that the Grizzlies had certain shortcomings during their tenures in Memphis. That's why we, have had so many different coaches come through here in just the 24, 25 year span of things here, just being in Memphis. So if you want to throw Vancouver in there, you're talking roughly, 30 years, 35 years, somewhere around there. But yeah, so when you factor all that in, you don't have a real big sample size here or a lot of coaches to work with. But of course, Hubie Brown, I've talked about a lot, what he did in turning that team around that he took over, and in a couple years, turned them into a 50-win team. That was impressive. You could say the same for, Lionel Hollins for what he did in his team, bringing a culture that Memphis really hadn't established yet. Even the Hubie Brown teams, they played hard, but that was it. I mean, like there was no established culture, in Memphis with those teams. But then the grit and grind era came, and Lionel Hollins, took over that time. And then we saw, Dave Yeager and David Fisdale and those guys kind of be an extension of that window. Even JB Bickerstaff, to a certain degree. But here's why I'm going to say Taylor Jenkins. And for one, I think from a teaching standpoint, what Taylor Jenkins has done around the core of the Grizzlies is comparable or even better than anyone else that's taken over these teams. Now, Hubie Brown is the one guy who didn't have the top-end talent as much as some of the others had. And, it's different levels of top-end talent. But Hubie Brown, he had Sixth Man of the Year, Mike Miller. He had Pau Gasol merging to an all-star and all-defensive guy in Shane Battier. So he had some talent there. But the grit and grind era, you had Marc Gasol. You had Zach Randolph. Mike Conley kind of being the cornerstones of those teams. When Taylor Jenkins came here, he came here with rookie Ja Morant, and what they did was create their own identity. That's important because I'm ruling out Dave Yeager and JB Bickerstaff in a way and Fisdale, because they were kind of, to me, extensions of what had already been established under Lionel Hollins. So for this conversation, it's Lionel Hollins and Taylor Jenkins for me. Longevity, they both have it. And if you look at Lionel Hollins' career wins with the Grizzlies, his goes all the way back to the Vancouver days, whatever the case may be. But here's why I'm going Taylor Jenkins. You got the longevity, you got a couple 50-win seasons, you got a playoff series win in there. Granted, they've had their playoff shortcomings, but what Grizzly coach has not had playoff shortcomings? I mean, Taylor Jenkins has not won a game past the second round of the playoffs. Neither has any other coach in franchise history won a game beyond the second round of the playoffs. He beat what I think is now, when you look back on history, Timberwolves were a talented bunch. And the Lakers, you lost to the Lakers. Well, guess what the Lakers ended up doing that year? They go to the Western Conference Finals, and they beat the Warriors, who hadn't lost in the Steve Kerr era on the Western Conference. Up to that point, the Lakers were the first ones to knock them off. And then you go before that, you lose to the Warriors. What did the Warriors do later on that year? The Warriors went on to win the NBA championship. So they didn't lose it's no fluke losses in here. The Lakers, they had the bad seed or whatever, but they had LeBron James and Anthony Davis getting healthy at the right time. So you add context to the losses, and we can agree that they were ugly, but we're talking about Grizzlies coaches. Taylor Jenkins is at the top for me, not just because he's had Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane. The way he emphasizes development, and we're seeing it, with the Vince Williams and certain guys being put around him. And quite frankly, some of his shortcomings, I don't really think are his fault. Like if you give a guy a roster and it doesn't have a lot of shooters on it, and you're saying, go make this one of the best half-court offenses in the world, that'd be hard for anybody. So with all that being said, longevity and just the continuity, the established identity, he's creating an identity here. The Grizzlies are going to play fast. They get out in transition. They run. They're always near the top of the league in rebounding. They're always near the top of the league in defense. Taylor Jenkins has an identity that he established here, and they've been consistently good throughout his tenure. If you throw out one season, Taylor Jenkins is the Grizzlies coach and GOAT, Joe.
I am mildly surprised that you went with Taylor Jenkins. I agree with you if you want to say that it's either him or Hollins. I think that's fair. That's a fair take. I prefer Dave Yeager, because Dave Yeager is the guy that did get. I mean, you say that they didn't win a game beyond the second round.
You see how I did that? You see how I did that?
Well, they actually got to the Western Conference Finals, and it was one of the most competitive sweeps I've ever seen. And that might sound like an oxymoron, but it is true. There were a couple of overtime games in their partner, and there's no denying that the Spurs were the better team.
Let's add in that they won in the second round. Because
they won in the second round.
If Taylor Jenkins would have gotten the Warriors without Stephen Curry or something like that, he probably would have did the same thing. So that's all.
And if the 2015 Memphis Grizzlies hadn't had a broken face Mike Conley, they might have made the NBA Finals. We can play the what if game.
Beat the Warriors.
Absolutely beating the Warriors. So we could do this thing all day, every day. My biggest thing is that is one thing that you will never, ever be able to convince me otherwise. If Mike Conley is completely healthy in that series, they beat the Golden State Warriors. The best Grizzlies team in the history of this franchise is that team. The 2014-2015 Memphis Grizzlies. Not even close.
That Warriors team ran through people, man.
They did not run through the Memphis Grizzlies. I watched the game from Michael Cole when you were in middle school, probably.
They didn't. I was in the 10th grade. I remember.
When a dude with a broken freaking face was the best player on the court, and Steph Curry was on the same basketball court. So 2015 Grizzlies for me. But anyway, if you want to argue for Hollins, I'm cool with that. I wasn't a Hollins guy. You want to talk about not playing rookies? Good Lord. The current roster, none of these dudes would play if Lionel Hollins was the head coach. But there's no denying you talk about establishing a culture, establishing a dynamic. There's two guys that have done that in Grizzlies history. Hubie Brown taught them how to win. I wouldn't say that a culture was established.
Yeah.
Lionel Hollins established a culture. Yep. Taylor Jenkins has established a culture. And to me, if you're having a debate, again, I prefer Jaeger. But if you want to go Hollins or Jenkins, I'm cool with that. Let us know in the comments. Hit us up. Where do you land on that? I guess by proxy, I'm going Lionel Hollins, which is the wildest thing I've said in a long time.
Now you're going Jaeger. Jaeger's your guy's fine.
Yeah,
that was my perspective.
Jaeger was good. But if we're applying your logic, which I think, Jaeger was an assistant, right?
Yeah,
just kind of an extension of Hollins. That's an important thing to point out. Right. I'm arguing for a continuation of that. You're arguing for Taylor Jenkins. And I want to stress, Jenkins makes it to the Western Conference Finals. It's a different conversation, right? Like that is what is missing from his resume. I just have a hard time. Ja Morant for most people is an undisputed.
He didn't get an injured LeBron James or an injured,
we can't say that this is the most talented roster in Memphis Grizzlies history, like a lot of people say.
Yeah.
And then be okay with underperforming in the postseason, which is what this team has done for the most part. And that is why you could argue Hollins overperformed in the postseason. You could definitely argue that in 2011. Yeah. You could argue that Dave Jaeger overperformed in the postseason. I don't think that you can argue that at this stage with Taylor Jenkins. And that is what I need to see. But let us know in the comments. Hit us up on X. How do you feel? Is Taylor Jenkins your coaching GOAT for the Memphis Grizzlies? An interesting question, one that I have a feeling we'll revisit down the road. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. You can sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Do you think Steph Curry will get more than 4 3-pointers next week? Do you think Anthony Edwards is going to score more than 27 points? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. Maybe you're really feeling the way that Jaren Jackson Jr. is playing. I wrote about it recently. I know you have as well, Damichael, one of the best players in all-star season so far for Jaren Jackson Jr. Maybe you have him scoring more than 31.5 points, making more than 4 3-pointers in his upcoming game with the Denver Nuggets. You can do all that and more over at PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Moving on from the Taylor Jenkins question, and I want to stress, because you and I are going to be doing solo shows the next couple of days, partner. I'll have the Wednesday show. You'll have the Thursday episode. Want to shout out Coach Jenkins, since we won't be together again until hopefully after this is passed. No denying he's one of the best coaches in Grizzlies history. That's undisputed. And he's one of the best coaches in the NBA for all of his flaws, which people like to point out. Damichael, you were exactly right earlier in the show. Lots of coaches have flaws. You can't argue.
It blows my mind personally that like anytime I talk to Golden State people, like a lot of people complain about Steve Kerr. And think about our positioning. Like, could you imagine? Like, oh, Steve Kerr, fire him. Like, what?
I've even seen people say the game is his past current health issues aside. Before the current health issue, I've seen people complain about Greg Popovich, which is wild. Like, I will happily take Greg Popovich. The one that's kind of immune to that is Eric Spoelstra, right? You don't see a ton of that coming out of Miami. But anyway, shout out to Coach Jenkins. Going to pass and become the winningest coach in Grizzlies history here either tonight or tomorrow. And we'll talk about it, of course, more here on Locked On Grizzlies. something that, Damichael, you have some updates on the Grizzlies in terms of injury. Both Ja Morant and Zach Edey are out for tonight's game against the Nuggets for very different reasons.
Yeah, we saw it in the last game, and you touched on it as well, with Zach Edey turning his ankle a couple times. And, Joe, it was kind of a replay from the preseason. Like, we saw this happen the same way a few times where players would get injured in the second quarter. Marcus Smart, Ja Morant in the preseason. Then after halftime, they'd come back, and then early in the third quarter, they both left. It wasn't early in the third quarter for Zach Edey because, you know, that whole conversation about him not starting and whatnot. But I digress. That's neither here nor there.
Excellent use of "I digress." You're taking my catchphrase.
Look, Joe. I'm trying to take the pressure off of you. So if I knock it out and get it out the way, then
I'm going to start using it at the end of the day here soon.
Yeah, there you go. So with this whole situation with Zach Edey, that is exactly what came to mind for me. The injury, how it happened 2 times or whatever. But I'm sure we're going to know more as, the Grizzlies, they're going to do the imaging and get a bigger prognosis with a more firm timeline on what the expectation is there. He was not made available to the media, after the game, so we didn't talk to him. I'm sure Taylor Jenkins, ahead of this game against the Nuggets will have more to add there. And then same thing with Ja Morant. The last update that we had on here was that there will be more imaging done early in the week. To my understanding, that has now been done. So we will see what happens next. I know, Ja put out a tweet that said sooner than you think. And, people ran with it. Like, oh, he might play Tuesday or Wednesday. And I said, oh, that's not what's going to happen. I mean, if you've been following this thing along, the next step for him was to get off of crutches. This past game.
Yeah, I was about to say that the sooner than you think might be, a couple of weeks instead of a couple months, the way he was crutching around.
Yeah. He's off the crutches. And again, I talked to a doctor who's a hip specialist, like he has performed. He's seen several athletes have similar injuries to the one that Ja Morant was diagnosed with the Grizzlies. And he basically said that once someone gets off the crutches, the next step is to get in some of those. You start to do a little bit more movement things. Some basketball activity gets mixed in. All type of testing, biomechanical testing, things like that. And once those tests start performed and he starts to pass them, then you ramp him up really quickly. So there's a process that has to take place here. It's not just, oh, he's off crutches. All right, time to go play. Doesn't really work like that because that part of his body is still very vulnerable, for the time being. But that's kind of where those guys are right now. Then there's another guy out there as well, Cam Spencer. You remember that name?
Your boy, Cam Spencer. Your boy.
Yeah. That's. Look, you see that guy shoot at practice, Joe. He'll be your boy too. But I mean, I see him out there with Desmond Bain and Luke Kennard, and he fits right in. Like when they're doing the little shooting drills, like he's not a sore thumb when he's in that group. But anyways, he's getting closer. And what I mean by closer is you're going to start to see him in some 5-on-5 basketball stuff this week. So he'll start doing some of the play group stuff, more full court things and whatnot. And as you know, of course, the Taylor Jenkins, era or whatever the case may be, when guys start to do more 5-on-5, they're getting much closer. But this one, there are some precautions there because it's a season debut for him. So even though he's going to do some 5-on-5, think of it as preseason for him. He's not ramping up just to jump right back on the court. He's going to have an extended window, is my understanding, of some 5-on-5 action. So we'll know more on when he'll be available for games, but it won't be much longer. I think Cam Spencer is getting really close. 5-on-5 is a good indication of that. But yeah, so those are pretty much 3 guys right there. Ja's not too far out, and Cam Spencer's not too far out. We'll see how serious the Zach Edey thing is. But all things considered, us talking about injuries with the Grizzlies used to last much longer.
A quick plug for our Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Yesterday, the title of the newsletter written by me was Ja Morant doesn't need to rush back for Memphis. Yeah. And I would highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already done so. Subscribe. It'll come to your inbox each and every day, lockedondaily.com. That's where you find how to subscribe. The Grizzlies Going into tonight, 5-2 at home. If you remember correctly, Damichael, I know you remember this because you covered a majority of these games. Memphis was a pathetic 9-32 at FedEx Forum last season.
It was bad.
They have already more than doubled their total wins at home from last season, and it's November 19th. So they're playing better at home. The record of their opponents combined is a losing record as of yesterday's newsletter. The record of the next seven opponents for Memphis, the Grizzlies, 6 of their next 7 are at home, 37-57, right?
Yep.
Was the combined record, including a game against a team that's just as broken, if not more so, than them, and the New Orleans Pelicans. Lots of up and down opponents coming through FedEx Forum. I think that all of that combined, Ja is usually one of the ones that rushes back a little bit from injury. I'm cool if we can until December. I think they should go 5-2 over these next 7 games at worst, considering how they're all are a majority of them. 6 of the next 7 are at home. They're playing well. Take your time, Ja. We'll get you back in December when the schedule toughens up a little bit. So good intel there on Ja Morant and Zach Edey. Hopefully Edey's not out for too long, but he probably won't play very long anyway because Taylor Jenkins apparently hates him. No, that's not true. I just wanted to throw a little bit of shade there. But anyway, Edey's not going to play tonight because for reasons at least that don't involve Taylor Jenkins not wanting to play him, which is a positive. So Ja and Edey heal up. Cam Spencer coming back soon as well. That's good news. Coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies, we will preview Grizz Nuggets Part 2. Literally just played a couple nights ago. They're playing again tonight, but this time, Damichael,
it's different. Yeah,
it's different in this NBA Cup, buddy. It's different, brother. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, just $5, and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Maybe you think the Commanders are going to have a bounce-back week against the stupid Dallas Cowboys who look so terrible now, which makes me so happy as a Washington Commanders fan. Maybe you think Jaden Daniels is going to quiet all – Bo Nix. Who is this Bo Nix that everybody's talking about?
Oh, you better – those FanDuel odds are going up for Bo Nix. Have you been paying attention?
I have been paying attention. And Jaden Daniels is going to remind everybody that a couple of off weeks does not mean he's not the offensive player of the year for the rookies. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Tonight, Damichael, you will be back in FedEx Forum covering Grizzlies Nuggets. It'll probably be a little bit of deja vu. Obviously, the last time that the Grizzlies took on this Denver Nuggets team, it helped that Nikola Jokic was not part of the proceedings. Do you have any updates on Nikola Jokic's availability? I know it's personal reasons. Did Jokic catch a flight to Memphis, or is he sitting this one out too?
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I've talked to some people on the Denver side, and they, don't sound like they don't think he's going to be back. And now this is not anyone within the organization, but people who are around the team a decent amount. So I was just asking a couple people, and it might not make too much sense for him just to come down for one game to Memphis. But I mean, some of these dudes, I mean, he's been gone a couple games now, and I think it wouldn't be the biggest surprise. I think it was somewhere I read that he was welcoming a child into the world. So if it's been a couple days and he's ready to get back on the floor, I could see it. But we know his availability is the ultimate decider in how this game goes, because I'm going to take it a step further. So if he doesn't play, not only should the Grizzlies win this game, you're not going to love this, but I'm going to love it.
Oh, jeez.
You're not going to love it, Joe. The Grizzlies, by the way, and let's point that out. And when we were in Golden State, everyone was super frustrated with how the Grizzlies played the end of that game. Super frustrated. Annoyed. Mm-hmm. Annoyed may be the word. Everyone up there.
Fair way to put it. Annoyed,
People were just asking me, what are they doing? What are they doing? And I'm just like, hey, point differential. And I get in there and talk to Taylor Jenkins after the game, He says, oh, yeah, we competed to the end, point differential and things like that. So this game against the Nuggets, you're probably going to be the only team in this group that draws the Nuggets without Jokic. If that's the case, you beat them by 15 the other day. You lost by 5 to the Warriors. You got to try to win this game by 15 to 20 points to kind of give you some space, because with as tough as that division is, I don't need it, in that group. Now the Pelicans have kind of sort of become a layup game in group play right now because of all the injuries that they have. But with the rest of those opponents, it's going to be tough sledding. And in this case, the Grizzlies, they got a unique advantage. They have the chance to play the Nuggets without Jokic. Not only should you be trying to win this game, you need to be able to try to create and cushion, because a couple teams are probably going to beat the Pelicans by double digits. You're probably going to try to beat the Pelicans by double digits. So it's not going to be a separator there. But the Grizzlies have a unique opportunity where they can see this game against the Nuggets with no Jokic. They just won by 15. You play that type of defense again, and you play just a little bit better on the offensive end. You get you a 20-point victory and you create some cushion. You could be booking a trip to Vegas sometime soon for the NBA Cup knockout stage, yo.
I hope that happens for you so that you get to go to Las Vegas. That's the only reason that I have any hope that it occurs. And that's not true. I do think taking the Cup seriously for Memphis makes a lot of sense for the reasons I wrote about recently in a Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Seriously, if you haven't subscribed, you're missing out. I'm biased because I write it, but you're missing out. I do think that, and it's important to point out, Nikola Jokic is a true questionable as of this recording. He hasn't been ruled out. Questionable, correct me if I'm wrong, partner, 50-50, right? There's a 50-50 shot he plays. But knowing Jokic, if it is indeed the birth of his child, right, I think the only thing that would make him rush would be the fact it's an NBA Cup game. And even with that in mind, how much does that really matter to Nikola Jokic when it comes, a family guy.
He's an NBA champion, family guy.
I'm interested to see how it goes. I do think that you're exactly right that they're going to have to take advantage. And I think that Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. have to be dudes, right? Like that's kind of the bottom line, end of story. They struggled offensively, as I pointed out on yesterday's show, when you pointed out just now, it wasn't the best offensive game. They need to come out and just completely dominate, because even if Jokic plays, there's not really anybody that can defend either of those guys. Now, if Jokic plays, no one can defend Jokic. I think that's a fair thing to point out.
I really wanted to see Zach Edey go against him, but
that won't happen regardless, right?
That's a bummer.
It is, but I do think that you'll have an opportunity to watch a Grizzlies team, and again, if it's Taylor Jenkins clinching his 215th win with Memphis, it's a chance for them to do so in a decisive manner in a game where they can gain some ground and try to be. They're probably not going to catch the Warriors at this point, but they can be one of those at-large selections and find themselves in the mix for the NBA Cup, which unfortunately should be a goal of theirs. So hit us up on X. Let us know in the comments how you're feeling about Grizz Nuggets Part 2 tonight, what your keys to the game are. I just think the stars need to be stars. That might seem lazy, but especially if Jokic is out, Dez and Jaren are the two best players on the court. No disrespect to Jamal Murray. He seems very checked out, although I did see, apparently he's a big fight fan, Damichael. Did you notice that? Apparently he went, it was the UFC pay-per-view that he's getting criticized for. He went to UFC on Saturday night and flew back in and didn't play so well. So maybe he'll have a chip on his shoulder and be interested in trying to compete a little bit harder.
Let me point out this, as of right now, it's this recording. The Pelicans are the only team who have won a game in the group, because you said they might not catch the Warriors. The Warriors lost to the Mavs.
That's true.
In a game. So right now, Memphis is 0-1. But this is the perfect case scenario for you, because New Orleans is the only team to win. You would think that New Orleans is probably going to be the team that definitely loses multiple games going forward. Dallas has already lost one. You'll play them. You can potentially, be a difference there. Now, then you got Denver. Same thing. So they have a chance. I still think with the way things are lined up, the Warriors, they're probably in the driver's seats. But the Grizzlies are minus 5 point differential right now. Dallas is -3. Denver's -7. So getting a chance to play against Denver, and if you put it on them a little bit, because I'll take it a step further. If you win this, since it's an NBA Cup game, only because it's an NBA Cup game,
because of the cup.
You're really not gonna like this part. If they win this game, and it's by like 5 points, that's a disappointment in a way. So,
good Lord,
I know you won't go like that. It is because
they're down their best player. Who cares?
But if they're playing without Jokic, the Grizzlies clearly know about this point differential thing. Mind you, we haven't talked about it enough, but the Grizzlies are 0-5 historically. Period in cup. They went 0 for last year. In group play. So they need a cup win, period.
They went over?
Yeah.
How in the world? Who won the NBA Cup last year? The Los Angeles Lakers, right? Surely they have a banner hanging, and Darvin Ham is being honored.
They do have a banner hanging. They actually do.
But is it signed by their head coach, Darvin Ham, who delivered them their first in-season tournament? He got fired, even though he won the. So are you telling me it doesn't mean a damn thing to Michael Cole? Is that what you're saying? You can get fired and win the in-season tournament? Hopefully Taylor Jenkins doesn't repeat that.
I bet you those two-way players put some good use to that money.
Yeah, they probably went and saw a UFC fight like Jamal Murray. But anyway, hit us up. Let us know how you're feeling about tonight's game. And going into tomorrow, we have a busy episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I'll be with you solo. Home and home back-to-back. A rare home and home back-to-back means Damichael is doubly busy doing reviews and previews for the commercial appeal.
Looking forward to hearing Joe talk about point differentials.
Yeah, oh my God. You can't. Woo! It's because of the cup, brother. I got cup fever over here. And the only prescription is a brightly lit court to help me watch basketball on. But anyway, hopefully you could hear and just feel the disdain in my voice for the NBA Cup. I hate that I have to care about this. But it again, I wrote it. It's not about me. It's about we. It's about,
you gotta think about the bigger picture.
Absolutely. I'm trying to be less selfish this year. It's one of my
the players care. So there you go.
I'm happy for them. Maybe they can send me a little bit of their winnings if they pull it out. But we'll be talking Grizzlies Nuggets. We'll be previewing Grizzlies Sixers, not a cup game. Joel Embiid. It's funny that there's a world where they would have played both Jokic and Embiid back to back, and that may not happen. I know Jokic was out recently due to illness. We'll see how he feels coming into Wednesday's game against the Grizzlies. But it's possible
you were talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant Embiid. Yeah,
but he played on Monday. So
okay, well, yeah, I know he's missed some games. Yeah, okay. So he should be.
It's never a good idea to assume Joel Embiid is going to play.
No, you should definitely bet that he's not going to play almost always at this stage. But anyway, we'll see how it goes, and we'll preview Grizzlies Sixers. And maybe we'll honor Taylor Jenkins for picking up win 215. Fingers crossed. That'll be our next episode of the podcast. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Again, make sure you're subscribing to the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter, lockedondaily.com. Make sure you're going over there right now. Subscribe, lockedondaily.com. Find the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Free and available there as well, sent to your inbox each and every day. For Damichael, I am Joe. Stay locked in. I will be with you on Wednesday. Damichael will be with you on Thursday, and we'll close out the week together on Friday. Episode each and every time. Locked On Grizzlies. Stick around.